In March 2026, the Chinese government released its annual work report at the two sessions. This document signals a pivot in the country's macroeconomic management. This chart shows China's GDP targets over the last decade. The left side highlights a downgrade to a 4.5 to 5% growth range, the lowest since 1991. On the right, the fiscal deficit rises to 4%, authorizing a 30 trillion RMB public budget. Historically, massive deficit expansion is reserved for high-growth mandates. Here, it supports a lowered baseline. The old legacy model, relying on debt-fueled infrastructure and real estate to drive total GDP, is simply no longer viable. Beijing is executing a controlled demolition of its sovereign balance sheet to rewrite the national financial matrix. Leading up to the 2026 report, institutional markets consistently anticipated a massive stimulus package designed to rescue the property sector. Such a stimulus is absent from the 2026 text. The state has shifted toward quarantining systemic risk. The current containment strategy provides baseline capital for public housing. Meanwhile, market forces execute a valuation reset on commercial real estate. This balance sheet shows the 2026 framework in action. It transfers leverage away from local municipalities directly onto the central government. This strategy is designed to absorb the risks of the old physical economy while financing a new asset class. The 4.5 anti-involution also targets strategic sectors suffering from overinvestment, including electric vehicles and photovoltaics, the technology used to convert sunlight into electricity. The state is utilizing environmental compliance, energy consumption limits, and credit tightening to force corporate mergers and bankruptcies. This process involves short-term pain, including the collapse of regional enterprises and localized unemployment. To counter this, the state set a target of 12 million new urban jobs. They aim to shift displaced labor into the green economy and the silver economy, which provides elder care for an aging population. A 4.5% growth target allows Beijing to execute industrial consolidation without triggering social collapse. To fund this transition, the state is centralizing leverage to bypass local governments. The 2026 matrix relies on the issuance of 1.6 trillion RMB in special sovereign bonds. Within that capital flow, 1.3 trillion RMB is allocated to ultra-long sovereign bonds. This utilizes duration matching, the practice of matching the maturities of assets and liabilities. 30 to 50-year bonds fund projects in artificial intelligence and semiconductors. These sectors generate value over decades, but have slow cash flow horizons. This debt cannot be issued by local government financing vehicles, or LGFVs. LGFVs are state-backed investment companies that borrow on behalf of local municipalities. Forcing LGFVs to fund 30-year tech projects would create a liquidity crisis. At the same time, the state banking system is under pressure. Banks are tasked with both absorbing property debt and issuing high-risk credit to tech firms. The state has allocated 300 billion RMB to the core Tier 1 capital of state commercial banks. Core Tier 1 capital is the highest quality of regulatory capital a bank holds, consisting mostly of common stock and disclosed reserves. By acting as the borrower of last resort, the central government isolates local debt while reinforcing its credit transmission mechanism for technological competition. The 2026 report includes a pivot toward demand-side fiscal policy. Historically, China's economy has had low domestic consumption, leaning instead on infrastructure and export markets. This flowchart shows 250 billion RMB from the ultra-long bonds linked to terminal consumer trade-in programs, bypassing traditional infrastructure nodes. The state uses these subsidies to unlock a multi-trillion RMB retail market for electric vehicles and green home appliances. This is supported by a 100 billion RMB fiscal financial synergy fund. Rather than providing direct cash handouts, this fund uses commercial loan subsidies and risk compensation to unlock service sector credit. The central state is utilizing sovereign debt to counter deflationary pressure and engineer a domestic consumption cycle. These policies serve the 15th Five-Year Plan, or FYP. The FYP is a series of comprehensive social and economic development initiatives issued by the central government. In the draft of the 15th Five-Year Plan, There is no rigid GDP growth target for the 5-year period. Instead, the state mandate requires national research and development spending to grow by more than 7% annually. The plan directs national resources away from physical accumulation and toward human capital. State metrics require average labor education to reach 11.7 years and national life expectancy to reach 80. The 15th 5-year plan optimizes the state apparatus for technological autonomy. It prioritizes the quality of the workforce over industrial output. External constraints pressure the People's Bank of China, or PBOC. The impossible trinity dictates a central bank cannot simultaneously maintain independent monetary policy, a fixed exchange rate, and free capital flows. China offsets deflation via exports, creating a $1.2 trillion surplus, supported by a 25% RMB undervaluation against the US dollar. Through capital controls and central bank intervention, the RMB is kept weak. This grants Chinese manufactured goods a price advantage in global markets. The PBOC is currently managing a conflict. They must keep domestic interest rates low to support the fiscal transition, even as the weak currency triggers a geopolitical backlash. The threat to China's export-dependent transition is Western variation. Global pressure is expected to force the PBOC to allow a slow and orderly appreciation of the renminbi. The state must balance the currency value. Appreciating too fast would damage the export engine. Keeping it weak invites global trade embargoes. Navigating this external threat while rewiring the domestic economy requires state-directed mechanical precision. The 2026 fiscal matrix is a maximum leverage survival mechanism designed to insulate China against a fracturing global order while funding its technological autonomy.